Hello, this is Jeff Varney with APQC, and I'm here today to talk about the Smart Grid Maturity Model 2017 Open Assessment event. Welcome to each of you that have joined us this morning. It's morning here in the U.S., and if you're overseas, afternoon or evening, we also bid you a good day. So what we intend to do today is to kind of introduce you to the opportunity that exists for the smart grid and the electric utility community here in 2017 around smart grid maturity model assessments. So what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the event itself. We'll provide some overview of the smart grid maturity model, and then we will come back at the end and talk about how you can proceed. So we'll go ahead and jump right in at this point. I do want to mention that joining me on the call today is Tracy Kelly from Carnegie Mellon University's Software Engineering Institute. And so you may also hear Tracy add some commentary throughout the course of the discussion. All right, so the Smart Grid Maturity Model Open Assessment event is effectively a no-fee Compass assessment opportunity. And by no fee, what we mean is that when organizations typically take the Smart Grid Maturity Model Compass assessment, there's a processing fee that's required. That covers the cost at Carnegie Mellon and APQC for us to validate the reports, capture the results, and do aggregation of the results into useful community views. Really back to one of the benefits at the bottom of this slide, which is being able to provide the participants with comparisons to their peers across the industry. That fee between now and September of 2017, or until 150 organizations have taken advantage of this open assessment, is without that processing fee. So it's a great opportunity to save some money and also relook at the ability of Smart Grid Maturity Model to give you a snapshot into where you are within your organization on this journey towards a smarter grid, and perhaps align that to strategies and future path initiatives to make sure that you've got clarity in what you're doing, how you're going to accomplish that, and how you might measure that going forward. Now, there's two paths with the Smart Grid Maturity Model Compass Assessment to participate, and that doesn't change. During this open assessment event, the standard approaches and processes that we follow and the rigor that we put into Smart Grid Maturity Model assessment, reporting, etc., it will be the same. But the paths that have been available are the navigated path and the self-assessment path. Now, the navigated path is really what we believe is the preferred path, and that's to use the trained Smart Grid Maturity Model navigators. And there's a community of these, and we'll talk more about how you can get information on that group coming up. But to use them, they understand the model. They have depth and perspective on how to use the model effectively, how to take the assessment correctly and interpret the questions and answers and fit that to where your organization is, to get a higher quality, more accurate perspective through the model and the reporting itself. I would say to date, approximately 3/4 of the participants in the model have gone through some form of navigated assessment, whether that's individually, where a navigator's come in and supported you directly, or whether it was through a group event where navigators facilitated and guided organizations to do more thorough and complete assessments. And then there's about 1/4 of organizations that have participated that have followed the self-assessment path, where they haven't had the opportunity or the time or the desire to get that external third party to assist them through the process, and they've gone ahead and taken the tool, applied it internally, submitted it, and gotten their report back. So there's less interaction, there's less guidance in that case, but it's still a viable path, and we want to allow that during this open assessment also. So either path, the survey processing fees are waived by Carnegie Mellon and APQC during this cycle. And we can do that because through the navigation community and other licensees of this product, we found a way to cover and also absorb processing and reporting fees over the next several months as a benefit to the community to drive a great, hopefully, burst of current state 2017 assessments that will give us a refresh. And I'll talk more about the kind of timeline and where those assessments fall. But that's really the ultimate goal here is we found a way for us to support this and hopefully give everybody an opportunity to re-participate. Most of those on the call today may have already been participants in this smart grid maturity model assessments, and this gives you a chance to get a new current snapshot and compare and drive your progress going forward. So I'll talk more about that on the coming slides, and what I'm going to do on this next set of slides is really give you an overview of the smart grid maturity model, its history, how it's managed, the process I mentioned that we follow, and I'll go relatively quickly here. I don't want to belabor that, and then talk at the end a little bit more about how can you then get started and open it up to some questions and answers. So the smart grid maturity model itself is a tool. First and foremost, it's a tool that basically provides a common language and framework to talk about those characteristics of the smart grid transformation. It gives us a structure to facilitate the conversation, evaluate where organizations are, and actually compare across organizations. And further, it gives now you a structure that you can build that roadmap or blueprint to your future progress and track that progress itself. So the model itself is very useful and powerful from that perspective. And as I go to this next timeline slide, I'll kind of give you a sense. Back in 2007, a number of organizations through the Global Intelligent Utility Network Coalition came together and developed the initial smart grid maturity model. And you can see a list of some of those organizations there. And through that, we then piloted it and we rolled it out, not just to that group, but we made it available globally to any organization, primarily focused on transmission and distribution organizations, those that manage and control and provide the grid, as in smart grid here. So from that perspective, over the period of initial use and really trying to get some traction on how does this tool work and is it effective and is the structure being used effectively within organizations, we also then engaged with Software Engineering Institute to become the global steward for the model itself, to own and drive the product suite, drive improvement, drive the kind of systematic approach for navigated versus self-assessments, and tying that into an integrated view of the smart grid maturity across the user space, which is globally. And from that, we identified two updates to the model, one in late 2010, 2011, and then in a final update near the end of 2011, version 1.1 and version 1.2. And there were some structural changes where we simplified how you take the model and improve some of the nuances in the questions and answers and the reporting. And also in version 1.2, some of the results that go into the report to try and make it more usable and action-oriented for organizations to take that into their blueprinting and road mapping activities to drive their actual smart grid journeys. But since that time, 2012, what you'll find is that the model has been relatively stable. There have been some suggested improvements and ways that we could go and further enhance, but there hasn't been a significant drive or need to change the model. And we've had over then through that time to current date here in 2017, hundreds of organizations that have taken the model, used the assessment, and applied it within their organizations. So the concept here is that we have had organizations that started using the model back in 2008. They continue to take them here through 2017. So over the period of almost 9 years now, organizations have been using this. Some took it a single time in 2009 or 2011 or 2015. Others have taken the assessment numerous times, maybe every other year, every third year, to understand what progress they've made and what progress or what the next steps might be going forward. So it's a tool that we want to encourage that reuse and reapplication over time to guide the journey, because this transformation to a smarter, more capable grid through the digital technologies and the business transformations that need to accompany that is something that does take time. It's not a, we'll get it done in 18 months. This is a multi-year journey for all utilities to take advantage of the technologies and the capabilities and the best practices across the industry. So with that being said, the model itself, as we look at it, is, as I mentioned, managed and stewarded by SEI, and here's a little bit of information on SEI, what they do and how they fit in. They're housed or part of Carnegie Mellon University, as I mentioned earlier. And so they provide the continuity and the programmatics to make this all work. And that's why we're working with them today and continue to in the future to drive the effectiveness and the value through the smart grid maturity model. Now, their role is to provide governance, to ensure it's got widespread availability, and it's available to all, but as you know, and we talked about earlier, we have to also make sure that we can fund this, and it was self-funding through those processing and reporting fees. But at this point, as we said, to improve the availability, this open assessment event to hopefully encourage more and more use through that no fee for processing. Evolve the model. Again, we did that and we went through several iterations back in 2010 through 2012, but we continue to take the feedback from users and stakeholders and the navigators themselves, looking for how we can improve not just the model and the assessment tools, but how it's used to derive value within organizations. So we encourage people to feed that into the channels that are provided by SEI. And then obviously, how does this then tie into the broader community for training and awareness and research and driving things? So working with the university side at Carnegie Mellon and looking at other organizations like EEI and others that might be able to benefit through awareness of how this model is being used and what it's driving and the value it creates is part of the goal here. It's really to bring together a community of smart grid maturity model users, but driving that to the benefit of moving the electric utility community forward worldwide. So when we think about the smart grid maturity model, it's pretty simple. Hopefully many of you on the call are already familiar with this, but it starts with 8 domains or you can call it groupings of capabilities that we care about, related characteristics. And you'll see on here in a subsequent slide, those 8 domains cover the higher level organizational strategy, organization, how we set up and manage our grid operations, work and asset management, all the way across to societal and environmental concerns. So it's really providing a structure to say, in these common areas, what does maturity look like for an electric utility? And that gets now to the second kind of part of this maturity model, which are the maturity levels themselves, from 0 to 5. 0 being that you really haven't started or begun your smart grid journey or transformation in any significant way. And then as you go forward, and I'll talk about this on subsequent slides, more and more mature capabilities driving towards an organization that has embraced and put into place effective application of smart grid technologies, but tying that into business capabilities and how you manage the business itself to drive ultimately customer value and stakeholder value. And then within that grid, you'll find the actual smart grid characteristics that go from the lower level capabilities to the higher level, more progressive capabilities as you get to the higher levels of maturity. So this concept of the domains that we care about to assess, the levels of maturity themselves, and then the individual characteristics at the intersection of those two is really the structure of the maturity model. Did I go the wrong direction? I did. Sorry about that. So the levels, let me make sure. Yeah, the levels themselves, the default level, level 1 is initiating. That's really where you're starting to explore options, conduct experiments, and start to put together what your vision for a smarter grid, a more capable grid would look like. The enabling is where you're now really starting to invest and put into place and show the pragmatic view of how that fits into how you run your business and how you leverage the technologies and capabilities there. The greater visibility that sensing and other techniques can provide into the grid itself and how you're using that to drive the value to your customers. Integrating, this is now where you're really starting to put it into progress and make it part of how you're running the business. And that requires a level of detail, structure, reliability, and competency within the workforce to do that effectively. And then further, you go on to tying this into more of a closed loop. We're learning through the greater visibility and the measurement and the automation and tying that back into where and how we tweak and tune, or in some cases, go after more radical or significant changes to leverage the smarter capabilities more effectively for our users. And then finally, this kind of pioneering view, which is to look at the how do we keep moving this forward? Smart grid isn't the end; it's simply a journey. And so it really continues. There will be new technologies. There'll be evolving context of operational things that you need to consider as a smart grid organization. There'll be new technologies that you need to understand how to interplay. There'll be perhaps connections to different industries and markets that you need to now understand how you're going to integrate and work within in a greater kind of ecosystem for the users themselves. How that might tie into telecommunications or other things, that are out there. So the key there is this model provides this ability for you to think about what you're doing, how much, and when, and build that path forward. Now, the domains we mentioned, again, you see on here a quick summary of each of the 8 domains of smart grid maturity. As I said, strategy and management, regulatory. It's do we understand where we're going, how we're going to manage that, and how we're working specifically in either a regulated or non-regulated environment, how we are working with the ecosystem, so to speak, to do that effectively. The organization and structure. Have we set ourselves up and modified the organization to properly leverage and take advantage of a smarter grid set of capabilities? Grid operations, looking inside of now, how do we actually do that? That observability and greater control. How does that now drive higher reliability, greater efficiency, maybe higher effectiveness in how you support and evolve to your particular customers, security, safety, etc. Work and asset management really gets into now understanding and being able to manage the assets themselves, whether it's condition-based maintenance, time-based maintenance, or other more complex schemes that can be applied, and tying that into technologies, etc., for tracking grid uptime and reliability, and also engaging the techniques of mobile workforce to better align and do that in a way that gives visibility and improved effectiveness across your organization. Technology, there's an underlying technology footprint, whether that comes to integration of tools and application systems, networking, and that can go both from your traditional infrastructure, but also kind of the extranet and how that might tie in to giving customers greater visibility into what they're doing and how they fit, etc. So both internal and external views of technology that evolve to really take advantage of this digital transformation. On a customer side, new models and capabilities there, and as I mentioned, giving them greater visibility and allowing them to have greater control around advanced services. Across the value chain, looking at how the value chain is evolving around demand and supply and some of the renewables and how that ties in, and does the market now and how you work with your customers fully engage them and give them their flexibility, but also lead towards your stakeholders' benefits. And societal and environmental, as you can imagine, are we really being responsible stewards, working with our communities, and really driving towards sustainable infrastructure for the future as that evolves? So there's the 8 domains of smart grid maturity, and again, hopefully you're familiar with these. We're happy to get on and talk about these in more detail with you offline if you have the interest. So next set of slides here, I'm going to go through hopefully quickly here. The smart grid maturity model product suite itself starts with the model and then the Compass survey, which is the questionnaire that allows us to actually perform an assessment of individual organizations. There's a process here for how we go about doing that, and especially for the navigated process, these trained and capable individuals that can come in and help you to do it within your organization at a higher level of quality and effectiveness. And so there's a process that those navigators follow to prepare an organization, ensure the right people are involved, to actually go through and help to gather and collect and complete the survey itself with the highest level of quality. And then to take the results and put it into usable forms and use that to guide the future blueprinting, road mapping, or action planning that might be triggered by the awareness of what the model shows, the results of the assessment show. So that's available in a key part here. There is then some training and other collateral that's provided through SEI on their website, where if you want to see some results and get some other information about how to become a navigator, for instance, or whether or not you want to look at some of the documentation around the model, et cetera. It's all provided there. And then finally, there's a partner program for licensee organizations that really sponsor and provide those navigators and drive that navigation process. So the whole product suite really encompasses these elements. Now, the survey itself is based on the structure of the model. Each element or characteristic within this grid we talked about, for each domain at each level, the characteristics that are there, there's a single question and set of predefined answer options that then are used to calculate and report on your maturity. And so that's really the structure of the model, of the survey itself, based on the model. And here's an example of a question for work and asset management, which is domain 2, or actually work and asset management is the domain. At level 2, question number 1, and you see it's highlighted there on the left, have you established an approach to track, inventory, and maintain event histories of assets using smart grid capabilities? And then the 5 answer options in this case, no, we haven't done that yet. Or, well, we've got it planned, and we've got a budget, a schedule and budget to do so. Oh, we're in work developing, but we haven't fully piloted and rolled that out versus the final answer options. So it gives us a sense for not just our yes, no, but where are you on the path towards this capability or characteristic of smart grid maturity. So that's the structure of the model. And as you can see, we try to make it as easy and simple to use, but it's interesting that as you go through this process and you talk within your organization, people may have different views of where you are. Do we have committed schedule and budget? Are we in development? Has the pilot been completed sufficiently to take answer option D as your choice there? So it really facilitates some dialogue within your organizations about where you are, hopefully helping to get you on the same page. So it's not just one person's view, but it's an organizational view of where you are. Here's an additional example. In this case, we're looking at percentages that you have key components with condition-based maintenance, for instance, that has that real-time data connection, leveraging higher capability sensors and the connections to those sensors across the organization to those that need it. So the navigation process I mentioned is a 5-phase process. You prepare, you conduct the survey workshop, there's some analysis that occurs, an aspiration workshop that says, based on your results and where you are, where do you aspire to be in the future and how quickly do you expect to get there? And then a wrap-up that helps to then action plan and decide next steps. And this is the standard process that a trained navigator will take an organization through. Now, if you go the self-assessment path I mentioned before, you're basically held accountable to do this for yourself. We will onboard you and provide you access to the documentation and the survey itself. You'll have to figure out how you prepare, who you should engage, and how you do so. You'll go through and complete the survey. As far as analysis, we do some basic analysis that's built into the standard reporting for you, providing views, and I'll show a few of those here in a few moments. But ultimately, then interpreting those results is really primarily up to you. We're available for some Q&A, but you don't get the depth of a navigator coming in and really sharing with you their insights and challenging you. What does this really mean? And why then would you want to put that into a future aspiration? Why do you want to do that quickly? Or is that fast enough? And to challenge you and share their views of different organizations and their experience to help guide you into the right decisions. So this is the standard process, whether you follow the navigated or the self-assessment path. It's really how much support and expertise comes to help you versus how much you have to do this for yourself. Some of the results you get back look like this, which is a simple heat map grid of your maturity scores or results. You'll see that we've got a red, yellow, green that gives kind of an ease to draw your eye to where you've got strong capability, green, versus some things that are in progress or needing to get a little bit stronger capability, versus those that you have not done much on, red, or in the case of gray, you haven't even started. And this is one of the views that really gives you a sense. And there you see there's a numerical score there also that's calculated based on how you answered each of the questions there. So that's one of the views. There's an additional view that's even more powerful sometimes to communicate across the organization and with leaders, et cetera. And this is taking this and saying, for each of these domains, we can show you the range, kind of the minimum and maximum, which is the bar on here, where the peer community average score or median is, and then also, which would be the orange diamonds on this, and then where you have actually scored. And this can give you a sense for where you are relative to that peer community, and also whether or not there are organizations that have scored higher than you for each domain. So in the case of what's on here, if we look at grid operations, we'll see that the most organizations are at least partway through the level 0 characteristics. They're not at the bottom. Everybody's doing something there. But there are some organizations that are in that early stage. There are some organizations that have gotten all the way up to level 4 capabilities. No level 5 organizations based on this chart. The median is just at that boundary between level 1 and level 2, so early level 2. And this organization is showing that they're a high level 2 in their capabilities. So they're ahead of the overall peer group, but they are not the most capable or highest assessed organization to date. So this view gives a great way to look. And in the case of this one, peer community of organizations greater than equal to 250,000 meters. That's one of the standard peer comparison groups we provide. And from that perspective, it's saying for organizations that have a very large customer base, whether it's industrial, commercial, or residential, we really focus on meters in this peer comparison. So those were a couple of the views there. I mentioned what each of them represents. And it, again, provides easy-to-use views that are in all of the standard reports coming back, again, regardless of whether it's navigated or self-assessed. When we look at the community itself, you'll see it really has a pretty good dichotomy of organizations that have contributed to date. You'll see that 87.5% of the organizations do provide distribution. Just under 60% have transmission. About 52% are retail. 40% have, own, and operate generation. And then there's some other capabilities there. So it gives us a sense, and we capture the demographics and share this with you in the report, so you understand that community and who you're comparing to, and which of these you might fall into. Are you a vertically integrated utility? Well, in this case, generation, transmission, distribution, and retail, 30% of the organizations are vertically integrated, covering all 4 of those segments of the industry in their organization and delivery. And so it gives you a sense for who that community is. So how do you get started? Ultimately, back to this concept of an open assessment event. No fee through September 2017, or 150 assessments are processed. Really, it's a matter of saying, how can you provide value into your organization through these types of insights? When, then, might that be? Is it something you could get started on immediately? Do you have some strategic planning and other types of activities later on this year in perhaps June or August? And that would be a time to really start to plan for and use this model as one of the inputs into that process. Really looking at when you have the capacity, where the need would, and the values and insights would provide you the greatest benefit is what we're talking about here. So think about when. That would be the first step. The second then is, are you going to go through the navigated assessment or a self-assessment? Again, if the navigated tips typically will provide higher value back to your organization, but that means you'd need to go out and if you've used a navigator before, re-engage them. If you haven't used a navigator or you are looking for alternatives there, go to the SEI Navigator page, which is available through their links that'll be on the last slide here. And you can go and look for a navigator and start to engage them. Now, keep in mind, the navigators may have additional fees that they require for their services, but the processing and reporting fees are waived through this process. So whether there are additional navigator fees would be between you and the navigators. On the self-assessment side, if you choose to go that route, it's really the ability to go down to, for instance, what's linked here, the open assessment event page, and that was in the emails that I think each of you received inviting you to this webinar. And you can actually go on that page and start the process to register and get started on a self-assessment, or let us know you're interested, even if you're going to go the navigated path. So we can work with you to help you through this process, whether it's picking dates, picking the path, or the pre-steps you need to get started and to do it effectively. So that's what the links on the bottom here are. They were in the invite to this webinar, so you should have those links already. But we'll do a follow-up with you so that we're sure that you've got them. But it's really pretty simple. Can you get value? Can you derive value? Make that decision. Pick a time, pick a path, and let us know so we can help you through that process. And hopefully what you're going to find is that this burst of current state 2017, where are we, will give everyone some additional benefits to understanding your path and current progress towards a smarter grid, and also refine where you're going in the future. So I think that's the prepared content. At this point, I want to open it up for Q&A, and hopefully through the cycle here, if you did have some questions, you've asked those through the chat feature or the Q&A feature. But Sarah, if you've got some questions that we want to jump to, now would be a great time.
Hi, Jeff. Yes, I do have a few here, and I will start with the first one. Somebody asked how long it would take once the process began.
Great question. From a timing perspective, it's part of that's driven by you, which path you're going to take. So if you're going to engage a navigator, et cetera, there may be some agreements, et cetera, you have to put in place. But I think most of the navigators, they've got that process well refined and can move pretty quickly there. But when you get to the process itself, we've decided to take the assessment. We want to use that. From the SEI and APQC perspective to support you, you'll have access to that, the assessment, basically immediately through the navigator or through the other forums that we can provide that assessment to you. And it's a matter of for some organizations, what we find is the best approach is, in a navigator sense, or by yourself, to bring together a group and conduct a workshop. Let's walk through the model. Let's have the dialogue, the most powerful way to do this. And that workshop typically can take a day. We've tried to fit that into a day. If you can't bring everybody together for a day and you need to have smaller sessions, et cetera, that will push your timeline a little. But from the time that you complete your assessment, typically within 72 hours, working hours, 3 working days, between SEI and APQC, we will have processed your assessment, looked at it to see if there are any concerns or validation items that we want to feed back to you, and we'll let you know how you answer this question. Here's a question. Can you confirm this was your intent? For these metrics that you provided, there may be some anomalies statistically, so we want you to confirm that it's the correct units or decimal places. And so from completing your assessment to getting those validation questions back, 3 working days, 3 business days. Once you've provided any responses there, then typically within an additional 2 to 3 days, we get your final report to you. So from kind of start to finish, you could typically get this done within a week. That's pushing it as you think about prep and pulling the right people together, scheduling. So most organizations, we find it's about a 2 to 4 week cycle for all of the steps involved. But that's driven by how quickly you can move and who you're going to engage to do so. On our side, we'll get all of our steps done easily within a week if you're responsive in getting us the content.
Thank you, Jeff. Sorry?
Additional questions?
Yes, we have a couple more. The next one here, is there a way to see a comparison to previous assessments?
Oh, super, great question. And that's absolutely part of our standard process. We encourage, as I mentioned earlier, organizations to use this recursively over time. Take the initial assessment, find out where you are, put in place a path forward, go off and actually start to make that transformation, putting in place new capabilities, et cetera. And so when an organization takes the assessment for a second time, we always then include in the report a visibility into their initial results and then their current results. And for organizations that have taken it 3 times or more, we'll show you, here's your initial, here's the second time you took it, here's the third. So you can now start to see and track progress over time. So we certainly include and see the value in showing you that progression over time, so that you don't just have 3 separate reports, but you get the comparison of the high-level views right there in the final report for the most recent. So definitely powerful and part of the standard process for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. And the final question that we have here, is there any way to look at different peer comparisons?
So in the standard reports that are provided, there are really 2 comparisons that we do as a default. The first is to the entire smart grid community itself. Here's all of the organizations that have taken the assessment, their most recent version, so we're not seeing the same organization numerous times, and showing you how your results compare to them. We do that on some of those views that I showed you earlier, that kind of min-max bar with the here's your results versus the community's results view. But we also do that on a question by question, answer by answer option also in the report. So that for each question and each answer option, you'll see the distribution across the peer groups. So that gives you some greater insight into where you are on particular characteristics of smart grid maturity. So that first group is all participants. The second group is really driven by what I showed on the earlier slide, and that is whether you are greater than 100 or 250,000 meters or less than 250,000 meters. So depending on which of those two peer groups you fall into, you'll get comparisons to that peer group also. Same comparisons. You'll see the chart there with the range and that peer group as I showed you earlier, and you'll see it on the question and answer basis also. So you'll see both the total SGMM community and then whichever of those two meter communities you fall into. Those are the standards. If you have additional views that you're interested in, we can certainly produce that through the repository, but those are custom polls, and it requires us to expend some additional effort to build a custom peer group for you. We can do that, but there is then a fee for us to cover our costs, the time it takes to produce that report and deliver it to you. So if you have interest in those additional peer comparisons, we can certainly do that for you. The one thing I'll add on top of this a little bit is that we have had instances where a group of utilities decided to work together. We call it a group event. And so this group of organizations will come together and 10 of them will all take it together, submit their results together. And in those instances, we typically will provide that group view that they've all agreed to see their comparison to that refined peer group. So if you're interested in bringing together, some of your friends across the utility community and doing that group view, we could certainly support something along those lines. And again, we'll just have to look at whether or not there's additional processing and reporting costs on our side, and if necessary, some small fees to cover that additional effort. But we would certainly entertain that for anyone that's during this open assessment period. Those navigated or those group navigated events can be very, very powerful. And we've done, I would say, at least 7 or 8 of those over the years. Was there a final question, or was that it?
That was the final question, Jeff.
Outstanding. Tracy, I'm not sure if you wanted to say any final comments here before we wrap up, but I'll give you a moment here to at least say hello.
No, I think this is great. I don't have anything else to add. Thanks, Jeff.
Outstanding. Well, thanks, Tracy. So if you are interested in moving forward, as I said, in the emails there, and you'll have it twice, the invite to this webinar and then the follow-up, there's links to a landing page where you can get more information, where you can also get to all of the content at Carnegie Mellon's site relative to navigators and finding a navigator, getting to all of the collateral that's shared there. And if you have questions, you can certainly reach out to myself via the emails and the other links that we've provided. I think the final page here has some additional contact information for myself and some of the links to SEI, CMU that you can leverage. So we will get this to you, a copy of this, and wish everyone the best, and hope you'll be part of our progress going forward, part of the community, and drive long-term value within your organizations. So thanks to all today, and we look forward to talking with you individually as we move forward. Thanks all. Bye-bye.